Hi, we are back. Again, I'm Elisabeth Nebeker, the Executive Director of the Utah Film Center, and I'd like to welcome back to the stage Amy Adrion, who put together this important story and film, and then Diana Whitten, a local filmmaker, her first documentary, Vessel, the Film Center screened, I guess it was 4 years ago, and she's continuing to do film work here in Salt Lake. So if we can just give a round of applause to Amy.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
I mean, hopefully everyone heard the challenges, the struggles, but really left kind of at that end of the film hopeful for what is possible and how far in many ways we've come. Of course, there's a long way to go, but you know, really impressive and important subject. So before I open up to questions, I just want to hear from Amy as far as, you know, this really is a moment, and for you to be the filmmaker that's telling the story, I mean, the timing is incredible. Can you just talk about how you got the story and how it kind of unfolded?
Yeah, and I would say I feel, you know, it's an honor to kind of present the stories of so many of the women in the film. And our film is one in a chorus of stories and of women speaking up about various issues that are unfair or unjust. So we're one voice among this chorus in this kind of really special moment, I think, where people are just kind of standing up and saying, you know, this isn't fair, this isn't right, and we're not going to take it anymore, in their own different ways. So I'm honored to be part of that conversation. And we were kind of talking about this a little bit at dinner, but yeah, I'm a female filmmaker, and I was having trouble getting my own films going, and it just seemed like I was being kind of bombarded by so much bad news regarding women directors and women in entertainment, and all the statistics were terrible and really discouraging, and I just really began to, I mean, I had worked in film since I graduated college. I was a PA, I was a production coordinator, I worked in indie films, I worked on Hollywood films, I worked at a distribution company, I worked in festivals, like, that's what I had done for 20 years, and I went to film school, graduate school for directing, and like it was still so hard, and I was beginning to wonder, like, is it me, or is there something systemically? And all this evidence I'm seeing is pointing to the fact that there is a systemic issue, and so I wanted to explore that. And that's kind of how the film started. And we started our first interviews in December 2015, which was 2 months after the EEOC opened their investigation. So these women activists had been really banging on doors and stamping their feet and saying, you know, this is a problem, and you're not allowed to hire just you know, someone who looks like this for certain kinds of jobs, no matter if it's a cashier at McDonald's or directing Hollywood movies. So it seemed like a special time where something was maybe happening. And so I wanted to start documenting that.
Great. Diana, can you share kind of your experience? Your documentary you made is 4 years old, but kind of the reaction for you actually sitting and listening to these filmmakers share their, you know, challenges, their successes, those moments. Is there something that, you know, resonated with you that from watching this film that you can share?
Well, when I was making my first feature, I don't think I was aware of the discrepancy in our industry. I really wasn't. I had no idea. I was, you know, just filming and trying to get my own work done, and I didn't really realize this until I was distributing the film and in contact with a lot more filmmakers, and that conversation was coming up. I had been a part of the Film Fatales group in New York City before I moved here 2 years ago, and they sort of educated me with these statistics that I had no idea about. And so, yeah, it's a familiar sentiment in your film. I was really inspired by your film. But yeah, to hear these anecdotes that really drive home what the statistics mean.
Yeah, it's definitely startling to see, with the numbers from film school, and then you even hear the numbers of, films that are getting submitted into Sundance, and then you see, the top 250, films are still dominant male stories and voices. And I guess, we think about as audience members, we love stories, we love films, we're not telling those stories, but I guess if either one of you can talk about what does that look like if we see more films with women behind the cameras, what can we as audience members expect to see? Do you want to take that, Amy? Or?
I think that's a really exciting idea, and I'm not sure exactly what it looks like. We have had, there's so many studies that we've all seen so many TV shows and so many movies over the course of our life, and what we see really affects what we think is possible in the world and how we see other people and how we see ourselves. That's not a revolutionary idea. There's many studies that prove that, and I think the idea of just, and almost all of that media, for the top 100 feature films for the past however many years, it's women direct about 4% of the top 100 grossing films. So that means men direct 96% of what we see on the big screen. And for most people who live in most parts of the country, and certainly around the world, those are the only films you have access to. I mean, now there's Netflix and you can see more different kinds of things, but that's our dominant culture, and it's really been told from a very white male gaze forever. And that does have repercussions, and not that gaze is bad, but when you only have a tiny sliver of the population telling everyone's stories, it's skewed, and I think you lose a little bit. I think the danger is you lose a little bit of the understanding of the full humanity of all of us. People of different skin colors, people of different religions, genders, when only one group is kind of projecting what they think about this other group, there's something that's not authentic there, and there's a loss, and there's a cultural loss there. And I think just the idea that different kinds of people are going to tell their stories from their own experience is really exciting. And just as an audience member, as a viewer, that's really exciting. I mean, you look at a film like Moonlight, that was just like a very authentic, deep, specific representation of based on a lot of Barry Jenkins' childhood as an African-American gay man. And, that was a very specific story that felt really fresh and exciting. And, I think that's part of the potential and the possibility for all of us, that we just get to enjoy these different stories, or Black Panther or Wonder Woman. We just see images of different people presented in different exciting ways that we have not seen before. And I think that's really exciting.
And I think that inaccurate reflection on screen of our world perpetuates itself, because this adage that you cannot be what you cannot see. So I think several people in your film recount stories of seeing other female directors up there and realizing that it's actually a possibility for them to do the same work.
Great. We can open it up for questions. I do want to just give a quick recognition of the Utah Film Center. Through our artist support, we support, as a fiscal sponsor, over 150 films. And we pulled our data today, and we have more than 51% of these films that are being directed by filmmakers. So we're really excited that we are representing equally these stories of women filmmakers, and look forward to being able to share those with our audiences here. But that was something that we want to prioritize and make sure that we're representing all stories equally. So that was fun to actually see. So can we open it up to questions from the audience?
Hello, I'm Suzanne. I'm from Texas, Louisiana. I have been a professional filmmaker, screenwriter for 13 years. Had horrible experiences with men and women in the South being a filmmaker, and still do a little bit with my relatives. So I divorced everybody and moved to a different state. So my question is, I was considering, and my now I'm inspired to hire maybe all women, but I'm wondering how you would approach that, how you would teach the younger men if you do hire them, or would you recommend having totally female cast and crew? Well, except for the actors for the story. So. In other words, you know, do you hire younger men? Do they have a different
No. No, I'm just kidding. Yes.
Do you teach them different?
Yeah.
Or mentor them, or would you recommend an entire female?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I'm sorry you had such a bad experience in the industry, and that's not that uncommon. That's a great question. For this film in particular, I mean, it was really important for me to have a lot of women in key creative roles. So our directors of photography, who are the main, you know, the people who just determine the look of the film, and they're behind the camera and doing lighting, like all of our director of photography, our camera operators were all women. We had a woman editor, women composers, women did a woman designed the animations and the motion graphics. So I think part of it is trying to seek out people who are jazzed by your vision, and if that's a young man or an old man and you get the sense that they're really interested in the story you want to tell, then go for it. If you find that the story you're trying to tell tends to connect more with women, then hire them. In this particular film, I didn't have any older men in my film because it was a very indie production, and my husband and I are the only two producers, and so, I mean, my husband and I got in fights. That's another whole situation, but, you know, I didn't have like a established 60-year-old man who was in the industry who I had to try to like educate about these issues. But I do think that, you know, younger people are more aware of and open to what some of these issues are. But I think in general, seek out the people who connect to the thing that you want to make. And it's different in different places. I mean, we were just talking with filmmakers here. You know, if you're in Los Angeles, you probably have a bigger pool of people who are doing the things you need to hire them for. So you do need to kind of work with the crew you have access to. But, you know, ideally, you just find people who connect to you and what you're doing. And we all know, I mean, if you start off down a road with someone who doesn't connect, but you need to hire that person because they're the best, or they have the best resume, or there's no one else in town, you're going to have a really bad experience because they're just, you know, they're not there for the right reason.
You know, it makes me think of a part of your film. If most of this conversation is about leveling the field of opportunity, there's one director in your film that talks about reviewing the reels of DPs. Yeah. And she has this moment where she has to question herself because she's finding the male reels to be so much stronger than the female reels. And that really resounded for me, because you don't always think that it's not necessarily about experience. It's also about opportunity to have access to that experience and all the toys that come with it, the cameras and whatnot. So I think that sort of relates to what you're talking about too, like how to view your potential crew, and in a fair way that extends opportunity past, you know, the norm.
And I would just say one other quick thing. I mean, with my film, this was a very kind of independently made, low budget, small film made from the heart in my home office with, it was a passion project. And I reached out to the women I reached out to collaborate with me on the film because they're women who I knew who were great. But I didn't really think about, even in my own little way, I mean, I paid them, they were paid, they got these jobs. I didn't really think of this little film as like opening the door for any of those women, just because we were so little and it seemed almost like they were doing me a favor to like, come on.